And hello and welcome. My name is Martin, and today what we're going to be doing is adding damage to each one of the enemies that we have created, as well as creating a small piece of code that's going to go on our character that's going to allow him, the character, to take damage. So let's go ahead by right-clicking on the Project 6. Let's right-click on that and hit copy, paste. And let's click on this. And let's rename this Project 7 _ damage. Okay, once we've got the folder renamed, let's right click in there and rename the project itself. Project 7 _ damage. Once the project has been renamed, let's go ahead and double click and open the project. Alright, once inside the project, the first thing I want to do is go ahead and clear any of the enemies that I have on the floor. And the reason for this is the way that we're going to create the testing for this is that we have two conditions that we need to test. The first one is whether the projectile destroys the component, and in that part of the code that it erases any of the sprite of the explosion and such to make sure that everything's gone. And with the other one, what we're going to do is run into it, since we also are creating a collision condition that is causing damage. So we're going to check both pieces of the code, and so that we know what's actually happening. If we don't have other stuff in the area, we can make sure absolutely that those conditions are being met for each one of the enemies. After you've cleared the floor, let's start by going into the first person BP and actually adding the code to the first person character. In here, what we'll do first is, this is the code that is for adding the the widget to the viewport. Let's go ahead and select all of this, right click on it, and create content from selection, or comment from selection. And let's type in widget to viewport. This is not a bad idea for the rest of your code, so the easier it is to see what's going on with the code, the easier it is to go back and make changes or make fixes, or to keep all this stuff organized in a way that it makes sense. Which is why the code that I'm going to add is actually going to be close to the viewport, since they're going to be closely related. The damage that we're going to create, or that we're going to apply to the character, is going to show up on the viewport. So later, if I have to work on this, if both of them are close to each other, it makes sense. So the first thing that we need to do for this is right click and create an event any damage. Okay, so let's select that one. So what this basically means is that once we apply the damage to the cubes, the ability for them to be able to create damage, any of the damage that they create will go to us, since we're receiving any damage that's being created inside the game. So let's go ahead and pull this out, and we're going to be using the current health. So let's type in set current health, and we're looking for the variable. From there, we're going to create a, let's go ahead and pull off of this, and we need, it's going to be float minus float. Since both the full health and the current health are floats, we're going to be subtracting their values from each other. And I'm sorry, I said that wrong. We're going to be subtracting the damage from our current health. So the damage from our current health. So the top number is going to be what our current health is. So let's grab current health as a variable, drag it onto the screen, and this time we're going to say get health, so that we get it as the variable itself. So now once we get the current health, once we get, so this will be checking for the current health, and then we want whatever the damage that's coming in to be subtracted from whatever our current health is. So we have, so this is it. This is all the code that we have. We have an event any damage. So any damage that's created in the game will be continually looked at as our current health minus the damage that's coming in, and that will then set whatever the new current health is. Okay. So with that done, let's go ahead and select this, right click, create comment, and let's type this in as any damage to player. Okay, so compile and save. All right, with that done, we now have the ability for the first player or the first person character to take damage. So let's start with the first cube. Let's go to evil cubes. Let's start with the S mine, and let's double click on it to open up its event editor. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to tidy this up just a little bit, just so the code's a little cleaner. Okay, so that's taking up maybe a little bit less space. All right, so the code that's written there right now allows for the mine to be shot, or whenever it comes into contact, when a hit happens to the cube. That's what the event is right here. What we now have to do is create a situation where we're getting an overlap from the character. Because if we don't, what's going to happen is that the on component hit cube is going to create damage on us as the player. So if we shoot it with a projectile, if we add the damage component to this part of the code, every time it gets hit, we're going to receive damage. So as you shoot your enemies, you also die. Interesting code if you want to use it that way. That might be, you maybe want to, maybe in a situation like that, you have so many enemies that you can either avoid or hit, and you have to decide how many you're going to hit if you're going to get to the end of the game. Who knows? But as it's written for us, if we leave it the way it is and we add the add damage to this, it will not be good for our character, because our character will also get damage. So we're almost going to recreate this, but instead of it being an on component hit, we're going to right click and type in event. Event actor begin overlap. So whenever an overlap occurs, so not a hit, but whenever an overlap occurs, so our character running into this character, that's when we're going to be able to take damage. So off of the execute, let's have this go to cast to first person character. And let's come off of the object and let's type in get player character. So it knows to get our function, so then that way it's attached to our health bar. From there, let's create the add damage. There. Or I'm sorry, apply damage. What am I talking about? We want to add the damage, but we're also applying damage. So the apply damage. And from here, we get to assign the damage actor, who's receiving the damage. So this is going to again be get player. And I need to be able to see. Okay. Get player character. And the other thing that we need to set up here is we need to set up the damage. So we need to set up how much we want our character to be hit. Now, again, if this is a mine and your first person character only has 100% total health, and that's the max for the game, then if you create 200 health here, the second they hit a mine, they're dead. Now, that may be something that you want. That might be a booby trap or something that you set up. Instead of it being a mine, maybe if it's like them falling down into a shaft, and once they hit the bottom of the shaft, boom, all their health is gone, right? So another way of doing it would be if you had if you were setting up a lot of mines, maybe you would want to have the damage lower. So if you had it, let's say you set up 100 mines, which means that possibly your character could run into 100 things, you might set up the damage to 5, or you might set it to 1. So then that way if they hit too many mines, they're done. Or, if they hit all of the mines, they're done. So for us, I'm going to leave this at a value of 10 because we're just going to test and we want to see our bar move down at least 10%. So we're going to do that. Now from here, the interesting thing here is that if it gets hit, it's going to generate the explosion, right? So if we shoot it with the projectile, it will generate the explosion. Right now, that situation doesn't happen if we run into it. Right now, what will happen is it'll just disappear. So it will be damaged. The sprite will and we are also not getting rid of the component either. So we may end up with something that ends up on our screen that creates a barrier for our character that our character can't get through. So we have to recreate the sprite and the destroy component aspects of what we did on the on hit for the cube for when we do the projectile. So for the execute, let's pull out and let's type in spawn actor. So exactly what we have there. So spawn actor. So it's going to be the one that looks like a circle with the little star above it. It's going to be underneath the game. This is the one that we're looking for. From there, the actor that we want to spawn is going to be the effects explosion. So let's go ahead and put that one in. And where we want it to explode is going to be from wherever the pawn is, right? So let's get world transform cube. So we're going to make the cube itself transform. Let's clean that up a little bit. We're going to make the cube transform. So what we have done now is recreated the explosion effect. Now, just like the explosion effect down here at the bottom, we need to make sure that we don't leave any remnants of it, that we're not leaving any sprites behind or anything that could block our character. So we're going to pull off of return value and type in promote to variable. This way we can create an event and then destroy anything that was associated with it. So let's click on this and click up here and let's name this explosion, and I'm going to name it 2 since we may already have a value that is down here that says explosion sprite. So just make sure that you give it a different name from the explosion that's happening down here at the bottom so it doesn't get confused. And from there, we're going to right click on this, go down here and add on play event. Again, I love the fact that it drops that way down there. I wish it would just drop it next to the variable, but whatever. Okay, so what we'll have to do is pull off of here and destroy the actor, and that will now ensure that the spawned explosion will itself go away. Now, the only problem with the code that we have written right now is that we are actually still leaving both the cube and the box collision on the stage. Those have not been destroyed. So just like we did with down here, once we got rid of this, we created a sequence and then destroyed the cube, right? And you know what? Let's actually add the box to this. Oops, sorry. Let's go back there. And we're going to need to add the box since this is a new component. So we will need to add that to the destroy component for this part of the equation so that when it gets shot by the projectile. And in here, we're going to split off and type in sequence. Sequence. Okay. Oh no, that's not what I want. Click out and type in sequence. Okay, we'll type in sequence. And by default, this should already reconnect itself to the first pin, which is the way that we have it down here for the component hit. So just off of the pin number 2, let's go ahead and type in destroy destroy components. There it is. So destroy component, and let's hit the box. And so now we have the box that's being destroyed. Let's do just like we did down here and make sure that both the box and the cube get destroyed. So let's grab the cube and drag that down there and also attach it to that target. Okay, so let's go through and read what we have. We have when the component gets overlapped, it's going to affect the first person player. We're going to get the information for the first person player. It's going to then create damage for the first person player at a level at a value of 10. It's then going to do two things. It's going to create an explosion when it creates the overlap effect, and then that explosion will make sure that we don't have any remnants of that explosion left over. And then once it's done this, and that it's also going to find where the cube is and transform where the cube was. And then secondly, it's going to destroy both the box and the cube to get them out of the game. Okay, so before we leave from here, we want to actually check to make sure that both our cube and our box collision have the proper collision settings. So let's go into the cube, scroll down or up until you see the collision settings, and let's make sure that everything matches. So let's have the generate on, let's have the overlap up, let's make sure that it is on the yes that the character can step. We want it to be custom. We want to make sure that both the quarry and the physics are there. We want to make sure that it's on world static, and we also want to make sure that it is all the way down as block. From there, let's go to the cube and check its settings. So, I'm sorry, on the box collision and check its settings. And what we should have for here is generate hit no. We want it to generate an overlap. We do want the character to be able to stand on it. We do want it to be a custom because there are going to be changes that we're going to make down there. We do want it to be quarry and physics available. And we want basically everything on an overlap except for the projectile. So with that there, we should be able to go and push compile save. So let's go ahead and test this. So let's hit compile and save. And this should work. So let's go ahead and push play. Let's hit one box that did not cause damage. Let's scroll over the other box. And if we go over the area where the box was, we see that we have no damage lingering. And let's go over the area where the one that we shot was, and we see that we have also no damage left over. So with that, we've tested both the projectile condition, and we have tested both the projectile condition and the once we could make a collision with the S-mine. Now at this point, this video is long enough, so we're going to pick up with the next cube in the next video. Okay. See you then. I hope you've enjoyed this. Bye-bye.